Thank you. What a to introduce Her Excellency Maria Fernanda Espinosa at the World Government Summit. For those of you who haven't met her yet, Her Excellency has served as the President of the 73rd session of the UN General Assembly and also has been Ecuadorian Foreign Minister, Defense Minister, and Natural and Cultural Health Minister. Colleagues and delegates around the world, we stand at a crossroads for future of our planet. Without climate action, there can be no habitable future for humans. As the self-organized youth constituency to the UN system, we are determined to bring the voices of youth to make sure that does not happen. Paris was a crown jewel of multilateralism. Almost every member state of the UN agreeing to change its behavior for the global good. And we are now approaching COP26 in the UK next year, where countries are required to update their eventually towards a road Rio plus 30 and Stockholm plus 50, marking 50 years since environment was mainstreamed as an agenda in the UN system. For example, climate crisis and environmental degradation is a matter of intergenerational equity. Those that have contributed least to the problems are poised to bear maximum impacts, especially children and young women from the most vulnerable countries. In September this year, we saw China and the EU make impressive announcements at the General Assembly. This year was meant to be another jewel in the multilateral biodiversity, and while we have Secretary General 6 point for COVID-19 recovery, we are running out of time. Your Excellency, having seen this, having seen the kind of crises we are facing, what kind of multilateralism do we need moving forward for nature and climate?
Well, hello, Yugratna. It's so nice to see you, to see you, even if it's digitally. And I would like to, of course, start by thanking the World Government Summit and UN 75 for these 75 minutes for global collaboration and this conversation with you, Yugratna, on the key action points to win the climate race. And I think you said it very well. The climate crisis is the greatest challenge of our time. If we do not act today, it will increase the risk of violent conflict, create threats to human security, displacement of millions of victims, deepen poverty, and challenge conflict recovery and peace building. We know that. However, greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise at a rate of 1.5% per year in the last decade, despite of scientific warnings and political commitments. And as an optimist, of course, I would dare to say that we cannot accept that our current reality cannot be changed and that we are living a manifest destiny. We can and must do more. And I think that this 75th anniversary of the UN is a golden opportunity for building back better. We hear this motto, building back better, but building back better has to mean decarbonize our economies, to rethink our production and consumption patterns. I think that the recovery from COVID should encompass not only debt restructuring or public investment or even green jobs and recovery plans, but also commitment to build a stronger, a rejuvenated global institutions. We know what to do. We even know how to do it. And we have now the responsibility to, think about the who part, co-responsibility. We all have a role to play as engaged citizens, as government officials, as academics, young thinkers and activists like you, Yugratna. So sometimes multilateralism is a word that even difficult to pronounce, but more needed than ever. It plays a critical role to ensure spaces for dialogue, for agreement, even to process dissent. So we do need here and now concerted actions to build back better our societies, global dialogue, international cooperation, multilateral solidarity. It's the only way to respond to the climate crisis, but to the current COVID multidimensional crisis as well. So we need a multilateral system that delivers. I think that it is obvious that we need to connect the times and cycles of nature of our atmosphere with political decision making. I think that the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated, how critical it is to go beyond short-term gains, sectoral approaches, and narrow, simple-minded cost-benefit responses. I think we need a holistic systemic approach. We need intergenerational responses. And just to close, Yugratna, in responding to your questions, we need to overcome what I see as three key deficits on our multilateral system. The number one is the participation and inclusion deficit in decision making. And by that I mean predictable, institutionalized mechanisms to ensure intergenerational, multi-stakeholder engagement in multilateral decision making. The number two is a trust deficit in the capacity and willingness of international institutions to deliver. And the third deficit is the implementation deficit. You and I know very well. We have hundreds of norms, of policies, agreements, the Paris Agreement, and we need everything to build a better world. And the need for a new, I see that we need a new multilateralism balanced scorecard in a way. Multilateralism and international corporations is self-interest. I think it is self-interest for citizens and government. So we need a multilateral system that is inclusive, efficient, relevant, accountable, and truly connected to people's needs. During my presidency of the UN General Assembly, my motto, my phrase was to make the UN relevant to all. And I think that we can make it happen, especially now and today. So back to you, Yugratna.
Thank you so much, Excellency, for the response. And I expect three deficits: that deficit on institutional engagement, deficit trust, and deficit implementation. We know that the solutions are out there, and there is lack of political will, lack of decision makers in order to implement those solutions. And if anything, this COVID-19 crisis has taught us that all crises happen at the same time, and true solution really is in collective actions. Thank you for the response. And my question to you, follow up to your response, would be that everyone is thinking right now on a what world would look post COVID-19 scenario in a post-COVID recovery. What realistically, in your opinion, does it mean to build back or build forward in a better, greener, and more resilient way, Your Excellency?
Well, I think that this is the key question of our times, Yugratna. So I think that the great truth is that there is universal agreement, I would put it that way, that we cannot go back to normal. Normal was the problem in the first place. So I think that there is common understanding that we need to create a new normal, to build back better. We need to craft a world that is more sustainable and more resilient, as you said. And the world, a world that is free of inequalities and injustice. And as you pointed out, we have the tools, we have the knowledge, we have the resources to do it. So I think that COVID has been a wake-up call for us to go back to our shared responsibilities and work, to protect the lives of everyone and the integrity and conservation of our planet. So I think that this crisis should be seen, even if it's so much repeated, but it is true. This crisis is an opportunity, to fight indifference, selfishness, and greed. It is an opportunity to build a new global order, a new social contract that will work for all, for people and the planet, and as our sustainable development goals clearly state, and to leave no one behind. I think that, the COVID pandemic has also led to enormous creativity, proposals, ideas, think tanks, academics, activists producing, answers to the questions that we have here today. So we know, as you said, what to do and even how to do it. And sometimes the weak part of the equation seems to be leadership and global governance arrangements that we need to deliver here and now. So I think that leadership is sorely needed, but it has to come from the whole of society. It is not governments alone or messianic leaders, but social activists, women, journalists, opinion makers, scientists, indigenous leaders. We all have a role to play in building a new social contract between society, the economy, politics, and our planet. And to achieve this, of course, we must work together, and we must ensure that the voices of all are heard, including the most vulnerable, refugees, including women, including youth like you, Yugratna. So we hear time and again that we need solidarity and cooperation. But here we have yet another paradox. We have, as I mentioned, a wealth of ideas, proposals, and a shortage of political will and concrete decision making to coordinate, to collaborate, to have a shared vision that leads to transformative action. So we have the responsibility to craft a new culture of multilateralism, which is a culture of cooperation, of coordination, of solidarity. And we need to do that in order to take bold decisions to ensure that our global commons are managed, cared for, and preserved for today and for the future generations. So that is the responsibility, that we have together. And I think that I will just leave it I would leave it there, Yugratna. But I think just to close that climate action is sorely needed. We cannot even think about a COVID-19 response of fighting poverty and inequalities, the response incentive packages for COVID recovery, cannot be successful if we do not address climate change fully. The financial resources we need to deliver, the policy decisions we need to take, and we know what we should do. And I think that just to make the story short, climate change must be at the forefront of our COVID-19 recovery packages. And and back to you before I get too excited. But I think the shorthand of your question is we can make it happen. We can build back better if we work together and we push for concerted action. And there is no way that we are going to recover better if we do not tackle climate change. And, as the Secretary General said, the clock is ticking. So so we don't have time. We have to act now.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you for this very message. And I hope governments today are hearing us, and leaders today are hearing us, that climate change has to be your COVID recovery package, and so have to be all the actors of society. Take all of society approach tackling this crisis as we move towards a post-COVID scenario is going to be essential on how we solve this. So thank you for that very strong message that you have given us. My final question to you is in fact on this issue, on the matter of inclusive future. As the President of the Assembly for the 73rd session, you were a strong proponent of generational equity, change in sustainable development, as well as pushing forward women in power, which was your initiative. As youth constituency, we worked with you as well on several moments, including the Conference of Youth that took place before Katowice COP in Poland, where we were on you, and then again in the meeting, in high-level meeting on climate and sustainable development. Both the events, young 100 participate chance to interact with you and learn, share their perspectives with you. And so in spirit, what do you see as vision in young people from today onwards, and when the UN turns 100? And what is your message to the hearing you here today on the 75th anniversary? And that would be my final.
Well, thank you, Yugratna. In the including young people in every panel decision making space at the UN, making sure that we had gender balance on everything we did, the initiative on women in power, I think was because I am convinced that our multilateral system with the UN as its epicenter and the sustainable development goals and our efforts to build back better cannot be successful, leaving the voices of everyone in society behind. So this, of course, includes young people, youth like you, and women. So I think that we have to recall that, before the pandemic began, it was estimated that 1.8 billion young people would enter the labor market in the next decade, out of whom only 400 million would find a job. So I think that the current recession is increasing the uncertainty around the prospects of the remaining 600 million. But not everything is bad. For example, the health sector today has become the largest employer of young people. So this trend is reflected in most countries despite the socioeconomic challenging context. So I think that meaningful youth participation and leadership require that young people have the opportunities, the capacities, the resources, and enabling environments to do so. And that's what I try to do as a president of the General Assembly. Realizing young people's right to participate and be included in democratic processes and practices is also vital to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030, but also to achieve, and to fight, to phase out, the climate crisis. We must change the narrative and practices on youth. Their voices, creativity, their contributions should not be an afterthought or a politically correct concession, but an integral part of political dialogue and decision making, not only internationally, but also at the national level. So I think I'm convinced, there is no limit to what this generation, the largest, most educated, most globally minded in history, can deliver. Just imagine, unleashing the potential of this 1.8 billion youth, empowered and equal youth. That would be truly transformation. And you asked me about women, Yugratna. Let us be clear, gender equality is not an option, nor can it be cast aside in times of crisis. We are 50% of the world's population. So women's absence in decision-making processes and agreements, have a direct impact on our collective ability to achieve peace, human rights, and sustainable development. We have seen and heard time and again, and I have touched firsthand that gender equality, is a stronger predictor of a state peacefulness and development than even its level of democracy or gross domestic product. So we have proven that where women are more empowered, a state is less likely to experience civil conflict or go to war. It is clear that women are critical agents of transformation, of this building back better a world for all that we are in the process of doing. So just to repeat that phrase, we need more women in power. And this is very clear. I think that the UAE has made great strides, but women are not even a quarter of all elected politicians in the world. 85 out of 193 countries have never had a woman as head of state or government. So, and women represent only 20% of the ministers in government cabinets. And in some countries, women are still not represented at all. And at these rates, before the COVID-19 crisis, the global gender gap was expected to close in 100 years. And we cannot wait 100 years, and now, of course, the COVID pandemic will set back this goal even further if we do not make, if we do not take, immediate actions to end gender equality. And I think the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action are golden opportunities. We are commemorating this year the Beijing Declaration. There is a Global Generation Equality Forum that is being organized under the leadership of Mexico and France and UN Women. I think it is a golden opportunity to boost, revitalize the women's rights agenda worldwide. So I think that it is clear that in order to build back better, we cannot leave the voices of youth or women behind. And I would like to close, because you said that this is our last question. I would like to close by just mentioning the global survey that was undertaken by the UN 75 team, and that reflects the voices of 1 million people worldwide. And the message is very clear. These 1 million people, mostly young people, they all agree that the UN has made the world a better place. And I too, I'm a strong believer that the UN is irreplaceable. And perhaps today we are witnessing the beginning of a new era to build back better, and part of the building back better is to build back better a new multilateral system with the voice and agency coming from all of us, especially young people, women, activists, indigenous peoples. We have all a role to play. We are the United Nations, and the organization has to deliver for we, the peoples, this very, very powerful first phrase of the United Nations founding charter. So I will close with that, Yugratna, and it was so great to see you again, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the World Government Summit also, for taking the time to discuss the challenges of our world today.